All right, welcome back to Prayer of the Barren Womb. We are in part 26 of the Four Rivers of Eden. And in my last video, I talked about having a Mandelbrot moment. And I believe I may have had another one in the last couple of days. And I want to make sure people know I had some feedback. A what kind of moment? And anyhow, let me spell that for you. Mandelbrot. Mandelbrot is the name of the guy who developed this mathematical equation. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of visual representations of what this equation actually looks like as it's iterating. There are people who've done hundreds of millions of iterations of the Mandelbrot equation, and you find yourself going deeper and deeper and deeper into the equation. You never arrive at the edge of the original shape, but that shape keeps emerging as you go through these iterations. That primary shape emerges again and again. You see it rising up towards you, and it has these subtle differences and these subtle shifts. But you can clearly see that it's the same shape. And my opinion is that that's a fairly accurate representation of the Torah. That you'll see these patterns throughout Torah rising up to you again and again, but there's subtleties, and there's shifts, there's differences. And one, for example, we see the primary shape being demonstrated for us in the life of Adam. And these primal events take place throughout the life, and we saw those same primal events take place downstream of Adam after the judgment event of the flood, emerging again in the life of Noah. You have a garden event, you have a temptation event, you have a drunkenness event, you have realization of nakedness event. You have all these patterns re-emerging, but there's subtleties and there's difference. And so what we're looking for is those same patterns to emerge again in the life of Abram. And what they have, they've emerged again and again. My last video talks about how the parallels between Adam and Abram, in that Adam was formed outside of the garden and brought to the garden in a condition of barrenness. We see that again with Abram. Abram is formed outside of the land of promise, in the land of the Chaldees, and he's brought to the land of promise. But he's brought to the land of promise, promised the land and the nation, but he's brought to the land in a condition of barrenness. And so that to me was another layer of this Mandelbrot shape emerging in the story of Abram. We had, 7 different parallels between Abram and Adam. This Yibum shape shows up again for us in the life of Adam. He's expelled from the land. He's brought back to the land a second time, but this time with a stranger in the house. We've got the theme of deception activated in the life of Abram. So we have all these parallels, and I think I may have seen another one in the story of Lot. Now, what's interesting about Lot is what I suggested in the last video was that I think there may have been, and I'm not dogmatic on this, but I think there was probably an adoption, that Abram took Lot in to his house and brought him in as a son. As his nephew, he brought his nephew into his house as a son. And I don't know if that adoption event was ever formalized or if any vows were ever exchanged. We're not told. But if I'm Abraham and I was promised this great nation, and my wife is barren, and I've taken Lot into my house, I would have the inclination that perhaps Lot is my heir. He's the one who's going to inherit the promises that God has given to me. So there would be this natural default assumption that I think would fall into place in the life of Abraham, just kind of assuming that, okay, Lot's the guy. But what's happening, I believe, is that Lot is not expressing the character the integrity, the honor that is needed for a man to become a great nation. All right, you guys. Hey, come on. Shh, settle down. Settle down. The joys of trying to do one of these things with pets and not having the ability to edit. All right, anyhow. To me, this is a parallel, and this is kind of another Mandelbrot moment. It's not as clear as the last one, where we clearly see Abraham brought to the land in a condition of barrenness. This seems to be a parallel to me when Abram is evaluating Lot's life. This seems to me to be a parallel of Adam naming the beasts, looking for his life partner. So I see a parallel between Adam looking for a life partner in the realm of the beasts and not being able to find his life partner in the realm of the beasts, and this condition of loneliness and desperation and frustration perhaps rising up in him. Abram has been expelled from the land of the Chaldees. He's left his family, he's left his country. He's being brought to the land of promise, promised a great nation, promised land. And my guess is that he's assuming Lot is going to be the means through which God is going to build his great nation. But he's looking at Lot, he's evaluating Lot's character, and perhaps thinking to himself, this can't be the guy. And I believe this to be a great moment in Abram's life of letting go of process scenarios that he's built up in his own mind around the promises of God, where he's willing to let go of Lot. And we can see some of these challenges in Lot. Let's take a look at Genesis chapter 14. And I think we're going to see one of the fundamental differences that challenges Abram and also challenges us. Okay, we're here at the conflict between the shepherds of Abram and the shepherds of Lot. And when verse 8, Abram says to Lot, "Please let there be no strife between you and me, between my herdsmen and your herdsmen, for we are brothers. Is not the whole land before you? Please separate from me. If you take the left, I will go to the right, or if you go to the right, then I will go to the left." And Lot lifted up his eyes and saw all the plain of Jordan that was well watered everywhere before Yahovah destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden of Yahovah, like the land of Egypt as you go towards Zoar. Then Lot chose for himself all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east, and they separated from each other. Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan. Lot dwelt in the cities of the plain and pitched his tent even as far as Sodom. But the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked and sinful against Yahovah. I'm going to continue with verse 14 here because I want to show you a parallel. This is one of those intertextuality hints that the Bible uses so that we can see things and read stories in light of each other. What I want you to listen for is the same phrase that we find in verse 10. And Lot lifted up his eyes and saw all the plain of Jordan. We get to verse 14, and Yahovah said to Abraham, after Lot had separated from him, "Lift your eyes now and look from the place where you are." So we have Lot lifting up his eyes and seeing the richness of the land towards Sodom and Gomorrah. And in his eyes, he's looking at the Garden of Eden. It's beautiful. It's well watered. But yeah, there's a serpent in that garden. It's called Sodom and Gomorrah. But in his eyes, he sees the plush vegetation, the river flowing through it. And he's going, this will be great for me. So he's lifting up his eyes and seeing this place of incredible wickedness as the Garden of Eden. Abram, on the other hand, after Lot chooses the well-watered, green, lush land of the valley of Sodom and Gomorrah, Abram is then lifting up his eyes, and I'm guessing, it's not told to us, but I'm guessing there's probably barrenness, there's probably rocks, um, obviously not nearly as plush or as beautiful. And he's lifting up his eyes to the north, the south, the east, and the west, and God is showing him the land. All this is yours. So we have this juxtaposition between Lot lifting up his eyes with the eyes of flesh, with the eyes of a beast. He's looking at the obvious resources in the natural, and he's seeing this place of tremendous wickedness as the Garden of Eden. Abram, on the other hand, is lifting up his eyes, and he's being shown the land with a different set of eyes. He's seeing with the eyes of the Spirit what his nation will become and the land that will be his. So I see this parallel between the incompatibility of Lot as the heir of the promises of God to Abraham, and the incompatibility of the beasts that Adam is naming in the garden to be his compatibility, to be his life partner. So I see this additional layer of parallel. I see another Mandelbrot shape emerging from this storyline and telling me that we're definitely on track with Adam as an iteration. I'm sorry, with Abram as an iteration of Adam. And we see another layer being laid down here where Adam in the garden is lonely for his bride. He's looking for his bride, can't find his bride among the beasts. Abram is lonely for an heir. He's looking for his heir, can't find his heir in the character and qualities that he sees in Lot. And so I see loneliness emerging now, not only in Adam, but I see loneliness emerging now in the life of Abram. He's lonely not for a life partner. He has his wife. He's lonely for an heir. So you have, once again, those same shape of loneliness emerging from the text, but there's variations now in the storyline between life partner and heir. So I looked at that and I saw, okay, I think this is another Mandelbrot moment. I see another parallel. And we find that we move forward, that the blessing of God descends upon Abram after Lot separates from him. And that's another parallel that we kind of need to have in our mind. How often in the story of creation do we find God separating and dividing? Said, this is light, this is darkness. You know, separating between the waters above and the waters below, separating dry land from water, separating seeds according to their kinds, that each would produce after their own kind, separating sun, moon, and stars, that each has its role and function. God does this. God does this separating and dividing. And this is part of our journey, is to be separated out from the nation and the inclinations of the nation, whatever nation we find ourselves in. Our job is to be separate from the darkness that surrounds us and to become light to the darkness. And that's going to be a process of dividing and separating us out. I believe the journey that Abram shows us is a pattern for all of our lives, beginning with dividing and separating from your land and from your family. You know, this is one of the hardest disconnects that we can make as followers of God, is the disconnect from culture and from the familiarity of our families. If God is calling to us, he is calling us on a journey of division and separating. He will separate us from our families. He will separate us from our culture. He will separate us from familiarity and comfort, things that we just assume are part of the plan. And this is one of the tests that Abram passes, where he's letting go of process. We put scenarios in place and think that's going to be the process that God is going to take us on. Abram's willing to cut away from this stuff. He's willing to separate himself from scenarios that he believes in his own mind, in his own ignorance, not not that ignorant. We all begin our journey in ignorance. We all begin our journey in darkness. And we believe certain things, certain outcomes are going to take place because we've put scenarios in our mind and we believe those scenarios are going to take place. Well, that very rarely happens. And so the willingness for us to separate from the scenarios and continue to follow God when nothing makes sense, when there is no way, God will make a way. So these are this is like one of the major tests of Abram, and he's passing right now. He passes with the barrenness test, because I don't get it. He passes again with Lot as his inheritor, and he comes back to the promise of God. We find the promises of God in verse 14. Lift your eyes now and look from the place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, westward. For all the land which you see I give to you and your descendants forever, and I will make your descendants as the dust of the earth, so that if a man could number the dust of the earth, then your descendants could also be numbered. Arise, walk in the land through its length and its width, for I give it to you. Then Abram moved his tent and went and dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre, which are in Hebron, and built an altar there to the Lord. To your descendants. Wow, he just got rid of one of his descendants. He just separated from the most logical descendant in his life was Lot. And he believes God. This is another evidence of Abram's willingness to believe God. When in the natural, if his eyes looked upon the natural, he would see nothing. Descendants, what are you talking about, God? There's no descendant. I have no descendant. Sarah is barren. Okay, here we go. So, yeah, I think I'll leave this one alone for right now. I just wanted to kind of update the latest parallel that I saw and let you guys chew on that, let you guys meditate upon it. And we'll continue with the journey of Abram and Lot because his story doesn't go away. And I hope to see you again in part 27 of the Four Rivers of Eden. And thank you so much for your time.